The history of the Mingos exposes the true history of prehistoric America. The Mingos are both a tribe and a nickname for indigenous people who speak Iroquois, and later for indigenous people in general. They were called, quote, Aborigines by the invading Europeans. The Mingo tribe lived in the northeastern woodland area, New York and Pennsylvania specifically. Thomas Jefferson's Notes on the State of Virginia is the oldest document that mentions the Mingos, the Mohican tribe. Jefferson speaks of a war between the Mingos and the Massawomacs, an Algonquin-speaking Powhatan tribe in Virginia, when Captain John Smith arrived. Smith had taken a prisoner of war from the Manaheads, another tribe in the Powhatan Confederacy, who told him that they attacked the English, quote, because his nation had heard that the English came from the underworld to take their world away from them. The Mingo were a confederacy that included the Mingo, Seneca, Mohawk, Onigahi, Cayuga, and Oneida tribes. They waged war on the southern tribes and spoke the Iroquois language. Teddy Roosevelt later referred to the Mingo as, quote, Mongrel Banditti, like the renegade Cherokees. Mongrel meaning a mixed-race or light-skinned melanated person. The Europeans tried not to take responsibility for the annihilation of the many indigenous tribes, saying that it was, quote, the work of the Indians instead, but they do say that the Dutch supplied them with guns to kill each other. After the destruction of many towns in the north, the Mingo migrated west to the Black Hills and as far south as Georgia. They were often called Senecers, which was said to have been the frontiersmen's pronunciation of Seneca, but sounds awfully like Sen niggers. The Seneca trails led south through Virginia near the Blue Ridge Mountains where, quote, Niggerhead Rock is, a spiritual gateway for the Cherokee, who were Mingos. The Mingo were the keepers of the Great Back Door, and the fighting line keeping the English, Dutch, and French from the west. Little did they know that the Spanish were already there. There was a tribe of Erie Indians referred to as the Black Mingos, which were absorbed by the Seneca. The Ohio River was actually named the Black Mingo River originally. They had a powerful alliance with the Shawnee Confederacy. The Mingos were kicked out of the Iroquois Confederacy because of disloyalty, and that's how the Mingo Confederacy was born and their war with the Iroquois Confederacy began. The author of the book, The History of the Mingos, goes on to say, "Will confine my remarks to a historic race that preceded the tribe we call American Indians. Who are the American Indians, and who are the race that preceded them?" He goes on to say that scientific anthropologists place humans in America as long ago as 200,000 years ago, and biblical scholars say 6,000 to 7,000 years. But civilization existed in America before any recorded history of the Mediterranean or Asia Minor. Plato gave a description of the Western Hemisphere, the Americas, or the Elysian Fields, which his character Homer spoke of. He described the race of people in America as equal to the Mediterraneans, which inspired Christopher Columbus to locate the place Plato wrote of. Plato heard from an Egyptian philosopher that Greek history was a child compared to the history of the Americas. The Egyptian went on to say that at the time of Egyptian, Babylonian, and Greek civilization, that a civilization in America existed, which was equally great in architecture, war, mathematics, art, and agriculture. Europe, Asia, and Africa was not superior to prehistoric America. The early Americans were farmers and had hundreds of acres of produce planted throughout the land. In art, the indigenous Americans were proficient in making pottery, cooking vessels, painting, and picture art representing everyday life on walls. The architecture of the Americas was equal to the glory days of Rome and Greece, with beautiful deco and curtains of the finest fabric. The art of embalming was advanced as well. It is said that the Egyptians of the Nile had nothing on prehistoric America. In conclusion of the history of the Mingo Indians, the author asks a question whether all races came from the Adam and Eve race or there was a pre-Primate. He goes on to say that after all of his research, he has come to the conclusion that, quote, "My reading and study upon the origin of the human race has brought me to the belief that man is indigenous to America. That is, that the prehistoric man of the Western Hemisphere was created or brought to being in this country, and that in no wise conflicts with the biblical story of the creation. The rich history of the ancient Americas has been hidden, and this jewel of a book has revealed much to be researched on. One must know that the current mainstream history of America is false and lacks the true glory of the indigenous people of this continent. All right, so to hear more about the history of the Mingos, to get into the history of Niggerhead Rock and what's all that about, we're going to talk about colonial America and the involvement with the Mingos. I'm going to talk about getting more into indigenous slavery as well. Whole lot of topics coming, so please make sure to subscribe and make sure you click the notification bell to get notifications and join the notification gang, y'all, so you do not miss a thing of what's coming up. There's a lot of rich history that every American should know. We shouldn't be clueless to this history anymore. It's not going to be a secret. It's not going to be hidden. It's going to be revealed. So stay tuned.